Okay, we're going to make this. It's called the Wedge Guide, as we covered in class today. We're going to go ahead and put this together, and when you look at something like this, you want to think about what your base feature is going to be. And what you want to do with your base features, you want to be able to look at it and figure it out, like what can I put the most detail on with the least amount of effort. And it looks like we can take this side view, the section view up here, and put this all together. That pretty much produces the bulk of the model that we're going to put together. Probably about 40% of it is going to be included in this. And it's just going to be a bunch of sketch items in here, Mid Plane Extrude up to 8 millimeters. And then we're going to put all that into place. So it's going to be our base feature, which other things are going to be placed on. So we're going to put our feet on that. We're going to put our wedge plate on top, and our limit pins for the limit switches on that too. So that is that's going to be our base feature. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and pick the right plane as we look at this drawing and begin to pick this drawing apart and think about what we need to put this together. We're going to put our base feature together first. We're going to put our feet on that, and the feet are defined down here on our front view and a little bit on the top view. Then we're going to go ahead and put in our wedge plate on top. It's got a little bit of curve, a little bit of tricky geometry in there. I'm going to show you how to do that too. Then we're going to put in our pins, and then we're going to put in our feature fillets. So as we look at this base, sketch in here, we're going to make sure that this corner in here, which is a feature fillet, we're going to make sure that we make that into a feature fillet and not a sketch fillet. So everything's going to have a feature fillet to it. I don't think we're going to have a lot of sketch fillets in here, but I just want to make sure that that's clear when we look at this drawing up here, that we're going to use a sketch that's associated with that. So let's go ahead and get started on this. One thing you want to do with this is you want to make sure that your units are correct. So you're going to go up here to this options button up here. Document properties, you want to make sure we're at ANSI or ANSI modified. And it'll turn to ANSI modified when you make some modifications to this. But it's going to be ANSI, not ISO. For this class, it's going to be ANSI. We're going to go down to units. We're going to make sure the units are going to be 2 units after the decimal for millimeter gram second. And now here it's going to say it's going to call that now ANSI modified, which is okay. But we're not going to go from 2, we're going to go to 3. So it might be by default 2 units after the decimal. But for this exercise, we're going to make that 3. So make sure you do that. That's kind of a common error that happens a lot. Make sure you check your units before you get started. And make sure dimensions come out right. And it gives you the appropriate amount of digits after the decimal to make sure the dimensions come out right. So we're going to go to OK, and then we're going to get started. We're going to start on right plane. So if you take a look at our sketch over here, our drawing that we have put together for this, everything's going to be included on the right plane. So if you look at the section view in here, section A, this is our section A. You can see what that looks like. And you know it's a section because it's got alternating diagonal lines and dash lines in here. It kind of implies that it's cut. So we're kind of looking at it as if it was cut right there in the middle. And that's what it looks like, and that's where our base sketch is going to be. So we're going to start with a couple of center lines in here. We're going to have a horizontal one. We're going to have a vertical one. We're going to have some offsets in here from that. But our origin is going to be right there in the middle of that circle, which is going to define where those limit pegs are going to be. And there's going to be 2 of them. There's going to be one here and one here. We're going to put all that stuff into one sketch. Then we're going to use that for a couple different features. We're going to borrow that sketch, put it in a couple different features. So again, units are in millimeters as we just did. And you want to make sure that we apply our material, which is going to be tin bearing bronze. So let's go ahead and do that too. Before we get started on the right plane, let's go ahead and take our material, right click on it, go to Edit Materials. Let's go ahead and close out the steel folder, but open up the copper folder. It's a copper alloy, tin bearing bronze. We're going to go to Apply and Close. So now our right plane, we're going to sketch on the right plane. We're going to start with a couple of center lines. We're going to start with a center line. We're going to make that go through the origin. We're going to keep this portion of that center line a little bit longer than that portion. But if we go through the origin here, you'll notice that we have a coincident relationship along with a horizontal relationship over here. So the endpoints of that line are blue, but the line itself is black. And just for the fun of it, if we were to rebuild this just to show you the difference between the two, sketch number 1 is fully defined, even though the endpoints of that line are blue and they can be moved around. But if we were to take that center line and turn that into a model line and rebuild that, now it's underdefined. So there's a little bit of difference there. And we can, outside of the sketch, actually stretch endpoints of that line if it's not fully constrained. So we're going to right-click in Sketch 1. We're going to go ahead and select that. turn that back into construction geometry, and now it should be fully defined. So let's do this. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go to midpoint line. We're going to go and sketch that vertically. Make sure you pick up the vertical sketch relation. Otherwise, you might need to force that by putting that on there. And we're going to change that to construction geometry. And that's loose too. So now we're going to put in our circle, which is going to be where those limit pins are going to be. And we're going to put a dimension in there of 4 millimeters. Okay, so now we're going to put in some of these other sketch elements. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing here for our base sketch detail. So we're going to put in a line over here, 8 millimeters offset. We're going to put an arc in the bottom of that. Another line down here, going to be 17 millimeters long. The arc is going to be 18 millimeters in radius. 45 from the bottom up here, and then 15 from that center line up here to that point. Once you get that point defined, we're going to go and put in this line, 5-degree angle on that, and so on and so forth. So let's begin to put this together. So our vertical line over here, with a line command, we can come back to that point and make an arc out of that. Don't want to pick up, don't want to touch the relationship over here on that line. You don't want to provide a relationship like a coincident relationship on that. It may not necessarily be where we want it to be. So let's go ahead and put in a diagonal line in here. And we're going to put and make sure that's connected. So these are not connected here. So let's get a little bit closer on that and put those together. We want to make sure you have a coincident relationship there. And let's start putting in some dimensions. We want to make sure we dimension this as we go. So we're going to click on the circle. And that line over there, we're going to make that 8 millimeters. So that line's black, but the endpoints are not. We're going to make this 18. Remember, we had an 18 radius dimension on that. We're going to bring this down a little bit. This is going to be 17, so we're going to make that 17. Not fully defined yet. You know if it's fully defined, if you can grab some of these blue endpoints and pull it around, you can see what you need to do. So we need to define a kind of a distance relationship between that circle or this line and that line down here. And if you look at the dimensions in here, yeah, that's actually, that dimension doesn't exist. But let's put in the dimensions that do. What we can do is you can put a 45 millimeter dimension between that bottom line up here and that point. So remember, as I mentioned in class, dimensioning between points and points is not great. It can give you some errors, but between a line and a point is okay, and it's appropriate in this situation to do that. But now we're going to go ahead and define that a little bit better by putting in this 15 millimeter dimension between that center line and this top point. So that center line is well defined. Now, because of that 15 millimeter dimension up here, that top point is well defined. And this bottom line down here is defined because that line, that point up here is defined, and that's going to be 45 millimeters. So everything's black except for this line. Let's go and put a 5-degree dimension on that. Between that line and that center line, that's going to be 5 degrees. And now the only thing we have left over here that's not fully defined are the endpoints of these model lines. Actually, this one is fully defined. This is the only one that's not defined yet. So let's keep building this. Vertical line here, an exaggerated diagonal line, another vertical line down here. It's nice to be able to kind of get the implied collinear relationship down here. But we didn't do that. We didn't make that collinear. We'll cover that here in just a moment. But let's put in some more dimensions. This is going to be 15. Between this line and that line, that's going to be 30. This line and this line, we had to make that parallel first before we can put that dimension in there. This dimension is going to be 20. So it's going to be 20 between those two parallel lines. And now we can take a look at this. We have one line down here that's not fully defined. And you can see the flexibility we have with that. So we're going to take that line and this line. We're going to make that collinear. We're going to force that in place. So now we have, again, another black endpoint down here. It can't be moved. This is still underdefined. So now we can put in perhaps a tangent arc. So we're going to go between that point over here, put that arc in place, kind of stretch it out a little bit. Go back over here to line. We're going to take a line from there to there. Now we're going to make this line vertical. This intersection here, tangent. And a dimension on this arc over here. We're going to make that, according to that drawing over here, it's going to be 24 millimeters. So now we have that all in place. So all the dimensions we have in here are here. All the sketch elements that we want are almost here. We need to get that last circle for that limit pin in there. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is where that line is going to be come in handy. We want to make sure your center line is going to exceed the boundary of our sketch in here. So we're going to pull these out a little bit. So this circle, we're going to go ahead and put in an arbitrary location. You don't want to get it near any of these other lines and arcs because you'll pick up sketch relations that you'll have to delete later. But we're going to go ahead and click on that circle, this circle. We're going to make those equal to each other. And now we have a 3 millimeter dimension between that line and that circle. Not the center of the circle, but the circle itself. We're going to make that 3, not 30. And then between the circle and that line over here, we're going to make that, looks like it's going to be 18. That's going to define where that second pin's going to be. So now we can do something with it. We have our tin bearing bronze in that. We have our sketch 1 in place. Now we can do our extrude. If you look at the drawing over here, the top view over here, it's got a width of that extrude of 8 millimeters. Let's go ahead and put that in there. So if we go to features, extrude boss base, you want to choose mid plane. That puts, not up to body, but mid plane. What that does is it puts the right plane right in the middle of our object. We're going to go ahead and use that for our wedge plate on the top, and some other features too, perhaps. And then we're going to put in a value of 8. So instead of 10 by default, we're going to make that 8, and go to the green check mark. Now what SolidWorks did is it went ahead and incorporated a hole where it ran into those circles. So we're going to have to do something a little bit different here. We're going to go back to our boss extrude, and now we're going to do selected contours. If we want SolidWorks to ignore those holes, let's go ahead and click on one of these lines or arcs in here, which define the perimeter of our object, of our base feature. And what that's going to do is it's going to ignore those holes in the middle. You know, we could do something very similar to that. We can click the regions side of this. We can click this region and the regions that define the inside of those holes or where the circles are. But if you just click on the outside, it clicks the contour, selects the contour. Now if we go to the green check mark, now we have that base feature in place. So let's go to our evaluate button, go to mass properties, make sure we have this correct. Let's go and bring a drawing in here and see, let's compare. So we have to go to options in here. We're looking for 3 units after the decimal, actually 4 of them. And we're going to make sure our slider is all the way over to the right to make sure we get the right values. So let's go back to our drawing. Let's bring that up. So the base feature, the mass is going to be 168.2231, which we have over here. And then the Y is going to be off by a negative 6.6894. And that's going to be a negative 6.6894 and then negative 27.7627. And we have that value in there. So we're going to close that out, take our drawing and put that back. And now let's go ahead and rename our feature and save your part. At this point, let's go ahead and save our part. It's called Wedge Guide. And we're going to call this our base feature. And then save your part. Okay, so the next feature is going to be our feet. So we're going to put in some feet. Maybe the easiest thing to do would be to sketch this out on maybe this face over here. Sketch out a rectangle on that and extrude that out by a certain amount and then mirror it to the other side. We could probably do the same thing in this side too as a single feature and do that. Another way, as I demonstrated in class, is maybe to pick the bottom of our base feature in here and sketch out a couple of different rectangles in here and then extrude that up. We could do that without having to do the mirror feature. A lot of different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the first way first because I think it's a little bit more straightforward. So some of the items we're looking for in here, foot tab is going to be 4 millimeters tall. It's going to be 14 millimeters long from that face over here off our base feature. And then see if we can pick up anything else. We have 15 over here as wide. So 14 long, 15 wide, and 4 millimeters tall. So let's do that. We're going to go ahead and select on this surface over here. We're going to go to Sketch, Corner Rectangle, start from that corner over here and sketch that out. Start from this corner over here, sketch this out. Over here, we can go ahead and select that other edge over there too. Now we're going to take these two lines, we're going to make those collinear to each other. So if one moves up, the other one moves up too. This way we're going to reduce some of the, we're going to reduce the amount of dimensions we're going to see in our drawing ultimately. We're going to make that 4 millimeters tall. And then this one is going to be 15 millimeters, so we know that because it's going to be confined by that 15 millimeter dimension in our base feature. But we're going to make this one 15 too, or we could, let's go ahead and delete that dimension, we could just make that and this equal to each other. We'll do the same thing. So now we're going to make that 14 millimeters long. So we're going to go to Features, bring that out by 14 millimeters, and go to the green check mark. So now with our base feature, we're going to go ahead and call this our foot tabs. And now we're going to mirror that to the other side. So now we have that right plane right down in the middle of this thing. It's pretty easy to do. So we go up to Features. We're going to go over here to Mirror. The item we're going to mirror around is going to be the right plane, and then the Features to mirror. We can go into the Feature flyout over here and click on Foot Tabs. Or if we just click on a surface that is specific to that feature only, you can't click on the surface over here. But if you do that, it's going to go ahead and pick up that feature over here too. So two different ways of doing that. Go in your graphics area to select, or to the Feature flyout to select. And either way you're going to get that. We're going to go to the green check mark. So the foot tabs on both sides, it says over here. Let's go ahead and go to our mask properties and see if we have that correct. Mask properties over here, and let's bring a drawing over and see if we got that correct. So we should be looking for, let's go ahead and look over here, 196.1111, which we have. There's off in a Y by negative 9.7199. And it looks like it's a negative 9.7199. And the Z should be a negative 29.7873, 29.7873 over there too. So we got that correct. Let's go ahead and call that our foot tab mirror. And we'll move on to the next item we're going to model. So make sure you do save your work. Okay, so what's next? Well, let's take a look at it. We have our foot tab holes. We're going to put our holes in there. And those holes are going to be a countersink hole, and symmetric, flathead screw, and some other qualifications in there too. So we're going to put that right on top of our foot tabs we put in there. So let's kind of orient this so we can take a look at this maybe from the top. If you do click on that surface, maybe Control 8 will do that. So let's go ahead and go into our features, Hole Wizard. And if you did this maybe a little bit earlier by practice, it might remember what you did, but it's going to be a countersink. You take your cursor and just kind of rest it over that icon. It tells you what it might be. So it's going to be countersink, asymmetric, flathead screw. So asymmetric and then flathead screw. We got that over there. And look for the numbers B18.6.7. That describes how that revolved cut's going to be. And then the size is going to be M3, and I believe the fit is going to be close. So let's make sure we consult our drawing for that too. So you're going to see that information over here for the foot tab holes. And yep, flathead screw, ANSI B 6.7, or B18.6.7M, M3, and a close fit. Okay, once we have that, now we're going to go to position. So we're going to click on this surface, not 3D sketch. We're going to click on this surface, and that surface is going to be coplanar with all these other surfaces over here. So we're going to exaggerate that and just put a point in there right there. And now we're going to put in a midpoint, or a center line. And we're going to go ahead and put it from that midpoint of that edge over here. We're going to put this in place on that. And then we're going to put a dimension between that point and that edge over here per our drawing. If you go to our drawing and take a look at that, we're going to be looking at this over here, which is going to be 5 millimeters, and it's going to be centered. So because we have that center line in there, the way in the orientation it is, that's going to center it. So now we can do the same thing. Now we're going to go over here. We're going to put a point in here. Remember, when you're putting in points for Hole Wizard, you can continue to add all sorts of model and reference geometry in here. And the only thing it's going to care about are the points. So we're going to go ahead and continue to put in points. We're going to put a point in over here. We're going to have to put in another center line in here too. So we're going to pick up that midpoint relationship in here. If we turn that sideways, you can see what I did. We're going to take this point over here and exaggerate that a little bit. And we're going to take this point and that point, we're going to apply a vertical relationship as we see it on the screen. That's going to make that fully defined. So one more center line. Let's make that normal to the screen. Let's go ahead and between this point over here, we're going to make that center line go straight up. Click on these 2 points over here, that line. We're going to mirror that to the other side. Now we should have all 4 of our points in there. Let's go to our green check mark. And let's see what we have for our mask properties. So let's do that. Evaluate mask properties. we're looking at 194.5126. Let's see if that matches our drawing. So foot tab holes, 194.5126. Center mass is still 0 in the X, but in Y it's a negative 9.3738. 5738. Yep, let's see if we can find that 5738. And then the Z-axis is going to be negative 29.6870. 29.6870. Okay, close that out. We're going to call that foot tab holes, or foot tab hole. And then we can keep the rest of the nomenclature in there for that hole wizard hole. It defines it a little bit better. And we'll go on to our next step. Make sure you save your model. Okay, let's see what's next over here. We're going to put in our wedge plate. That's going to be the next item up here. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing or borrowing some existing model geometry, add some offsets to that. And then we're going to do a little bit of tricky stuff down here. We're going to put in some arcs in here in order to define that. You can see that a little bit better in the right view. So if we zoom in the right view, we're going to be borrowing this edge over here, that arc over here where it stops at the curve inflection. And we're going to offset that by 6 millimeters. And then at the bottom of this arc over here, we're going to kind of pull that back a little bit in order to put this arc in here and in that straight line, and then we're going to extrude it. We're also going to have a vertical line down here to connect these two endpoints of those lines. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go bring that back and pull that out of the way. Let's go ahead and choose this surface over here, or it might be a good idea to maybe start in the right plane, but let's choose this surface too, just because it's convenient. And then we're going to go ahead and take our that sketch geometry on that plane, on that surface, and actually convert that to a different plane. So we're going to click on this. We're going to go over to sketch. We have to go inside of that in order to get to convert entities, but we don't want to convert all this. Everything, all the edges in that blue area is going to get converted. We don't need to do that, but what we want to do is with the control key depressed, selecting on those, that straight line and that arc over here, we're going to convert that. And now we're going to go to offset entities. We're going to go ahead and click on this. And it's going to automatically pick up the tangent over there. We're going to offset it on this side over here. We could do it on that side, but if we click down here, it's going to do it on that side. But we want to make sure that offset is 6. And we're going to go to green check mark. So let's pull in some of these points in here. We're going to have to do that. You'll notice that the points in here are black, which implies that they're fully defined, but they're really not. You can actually pull these in a little bit so we can do stuff with it. And they go from black to blue. If we were to add some additional items in here, like maybe the arc down here, with that line still being black, and all of a sudden it will embed that into the sketch. You won't be able to move it after that. You know, you can delete some of the elements that might be attached to that and move it around. But this is a little bit easier to do it this way. So let's go ahead and define this. Let's take that point over here and that line and connect those together with a line. Let's go ahead and bring that over here so that we have a coincident relationship to that edge over here. And now this side we're going to put in a tangent arc. Bring that over here like that. And we're going to go back to the line and we're going to put in a line that's going to connect that point over here to this point. Make sure that these two are going to be tangent. That one's going to be vertical, so I think the only thing we need to do here is put a 5 millimeter dimension on that. And we got that fully defined. Yeah, that was pretty quick. But let's do this. Let's go ahead and rebuild that. The sketch is embedded into our feature manager tree, so it's visible. You can know it's colored over here. It's got a blue and yellow highlights to it, so it's got to be visible. But we're going to take that sketch and we're going to right click on that sketch and we're going to put that on the right plane. So instead of face 1, let's go to the feature flyout. Let's pick right plane and go to the green check mark. So now that sketch, no longer on that face, is on the right plane. And the reason why we want to do that is we're going to take that sketch, we're going to go to features, extrude emboss base, we're going to go up by 20 millimeters. Not blind, we're going to do mid plane. We're going to keep that symmetry in there, and we're going to go to the green check mark. So now we have our wedge plate on top, and yep, it's time for, let's go ahead and call that our wedge plate. But it's almost time to check our mass properties. So let's go to evaluate mass properties, bring our drawing in. Let's see what we're looking for. So with the wedge plate, we're looking at 247, 4504. Yep, we got that. Y is going to be 0 still. Or X is going to be 0, but a Y should be a negative 6.2531. X is going to be a negative 6.2531, and Z should be a negative 30.8473, negative 30.8473. We have that correct. So let's take that drawing and pull that out of the way. Let's go and rename that, which you did if you haven't done that. Save our part, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so the next item is going to be our front chamfers. Let's go ahead and click inside of this and make sure we're looking at the front. So we're going to put a chamfer on this edge over here. And we're not going to do tangent propagation, but it's going to transition from that edge a little bit into that curve over here just to make sure it doesn't come out to like a big bump over here. It's going to be hard to machine if we do that. So there's going to be a little bit of a taper there. And the values we're going to be looking at for the chamfer are going to be over here in our section BB. So we're looking at 40 degrees off in that direction by 3 millimeters. It's going to be the chamfer distance there. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Where do you find chamfers? It's going to be under the Feature tab. We're going to go to Fillet, go to Chamfer, and let's go ahead and put in our parameters in here. This is going to be 3 millimeters for that. And then instead of 45 degrees, we're going to make that 40 degrees. And chamfer parameters, we're just going to go ahead and click on that. So again, we don't want tangent propagation, so we're going to go ahead and unclick that. It's going to transition a little bit in there. You want to make sure that that's correct. Now what you don't want to do is select on this edge too, because what that's going to do is it's going to provide a little bit of symmetry. So it's kind of like as if you're wrapping it around on something. So the 40 degree angle is going to be off in a different direction. So we're going to unclick this one. We're going to clear that one, and we're going to do that as a separate feature. So we're going to go to the green check mark on that. Then we're going to do it again. So now we're going to go back to chamfer. It's going to remember the parameters we had in before, except for the tangent propagation. But this time we're going to go ahead and flip it. We're going to flip the direction on that. So that's going to match that a little bit better. If we go to the green check mark, now if you look at it from the front and go normal to that, now you can see that the angle is going off in the same direction for both of those. So chamfer 1, we're going to call those both front chamfers. So we're going to call it front chamfer 1, front chamfer 2. And, yep, getting kind of boring, but let's go ahead and do our mass properties. Bring this guy over. Once we get our chamfers done, we should be looking at 245.8267, which we have. X is still going to be 0. Y is going to be a negative 6.2671. So negative 6.2671, which we have. And then Z is going to be a negative 31.0981, which we have. Okay, save your part, and we're going to do more. Okay, next one are going to be our limit pins. Remember, we put the limit pins in on the sketch for our base feature, and we kind of ignored that when we created that feature, but now we're going to consider it. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to borrow that sketch for a base feature, do nothing additional to it, and just do an extrude on that. And how far are we going out? So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I think it's 16, but let's go ahead and double check. You're going to find that in the front view. Our limit pins are going to come out by 16 millimeters. Pretty easy feature in here. That's our second to last feature too. So we're going to do the edge fillets right after that. Okay, so let's go into our base feature. Let's borrow that sketch. You just click on that sketch. Go over here to Features, Extrude Boss Base. And remember our selected contours. This time we're going to actually select perhaps a region or yet another contour. So for a region on this one, just click the middle of that. And then we can select the contour on this one by clicking on that edge. So you notice it's actually named a little bit differently. You have a sketch region, and then we have sketch 1, contour 1. But the sketch itself, we're not going to go ahead and select that, so we're going to delete that. We just want those two in there. We're going to go out by 16 millimeters and green check mark. And makes me nervous getting towards this far to the end. Let's go to evaluate mass properties, see what we're getting here. And let's pull this over and see if we got the right thing. So limit pins, it's going to come out at 248.3299, which we have. And then center of mass is going to be X at 0, as it has been. No, X is going to be a little bit different, so 0.1008. So we actually put some mass on one side of that. It's not symmetrical about the other side, so it's actually, it's coming out in the X direction by a positive amount. And then Y is going to be a negative 6.2191. 6.2191, and Z should be a negative 31.0568, which it is. So good. Hey, let's put in our fillets. Let's just do this in one video segment here. So if you look at our fillets are going to be, look around for that. If you look at our drawing over here, it's going to be here in the front view. It's going to be 2.5 millimeters. And we're going to be filleting all the sharp edges, all the inside and the outside sharp edges at 90 degrees. So with our boss extrude, we're going to go ahead and call that our limit pins. And let's go up here to features. Let's go to fillet 2.5, not 10, which is kind of the default setting. Items to fillet. Let's go ahead and click on that and that and that. And over here too, you want to make sure you get that inside edge. All these sharp edges get selected. And that. Then we're going to spin this around. We do the same thing over here. That edge over here, don't forget that one. And then these two edges over here. This edge over here. That edge there, this one. And don't forget the bottom down here too. All you have to do is select a nat line. Kind of does a tangent propagation around that. And that too, and the pins. So we're going to put a little bit of an edge along the pins there too. A little bit of a fillet there to keep those from breaking, hopefully. And I think we have everything selected. So green check mark over here. Evaluate, mass properties. Let's bring this guy in. These are going to be our final mass properties because I think we're going to be done. We really should be looking for 251, 2046. 251, 2046. We didn't get that. So let's see what we did here. So let's go ahead and close out. Let's take our drawing out of here and just make sure we have everything selected that we should be selecting here. Okay, so if we continue to move this model around, it becomes apparent that this sharp edge over here wasn't selected. So we're going to go back to our fillet, which we're going to call, and if we go back to our drawing, we can see what the name of these things are going to be called. It's going to be called our edge fillet. So we're going to go ahead and rename that while we're here, and we're going to go ahead and redefine that and get rid of that one. So if we right-click an edge fillet, let's go ahead and redefine that feature. Let's go ahead and pick these two additional edges, not that face. You notice that when we did not get that preview, we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that fillet. So when we put that into place, you want to make sure you got everything selected. Now let's go back to our mass properties and see if we got that. So 251, 2046 is what we have there. And this one over here, we should be looking at off in the X by 1060, which we are. Off in the Y by negative 6.1835, which we have over there, and then negative 311023, which we have, and I think we are done. So just to recap real quick, we started with our base feature with a pretty complicated sketch in there. Once we got that sketch put in place with all the parameters in there, we went ahead and extruded that using a contour select tool to just select the outside of that, ignoring the circles in the middle. And we put in our foot tabs. We put them in on this face over here, extruded those out, mirrored them to the other side, which we have over there. Put in our hole wizard hole. And we did some sketch mirroring over here once we got the holes defined. Put in our wedge plate on top, mid plane extrusion right there from the right plane after we sketched initially on this surface. Put in our two chamfers. Chamfers on one side, chamfer on the other side, two different features because they're not quite symmetrical if you did it as one feature. Put in our limit pins. We went ahead and borrowed that first sketch, which is our sketch number 1, same as that one up there. You know, it just takes that sketch up here and doesn't really copy it, but it's there. It's the same sketch. And then we put in our edge fillet. You just want to make sure you choose all the sharp corners that we have in here, both inside and outside corners. And that is our wedge guide.